This episode of Noise of the Broke Boys is brought to you by soap. Yes, that's right, I'm talking about soap that cleans your body and rejuvenates your life. Are you that guy or girl at the gym texting that guy or girl you met online instead of pumping fat iron? You know what'll really make them hot and heavy for you when you meet them after the gym? Washing your body with soap. Are you that guy or girl at school listening to the show instead of paying attention to your chemistry class? I know what will help you gain some real chemistry with your significant other. Personal hygiene. Dancers, did you just finish rolling around on the floor to music? The same grimy floor that was used as a toilet for the homeless and small animals? You need soap, my friend. Maybe you like fancy soap that makes you smell like warm summer evening walks around the flower garden. Or maybe you enjoy the soap that makes you smell like a lumberjack that wrestles bears in pinewood cabins in the mountains. Whatever your style is, soap is there for you. Pick up some soap at your nearest store and get clean, my friends. And now, on to the show. In today's episode, I sit down with someone who I've been acquainted with since I was a young b-boy. When I moved from Sacramento to Oakland in 2015, this man welcomed me into his studio like I was an old friend. I have an immense respect for this guy and am excited to bring him on the show. He is an amazing dancer, event coordinator, teacher, and California Bay Area hip-hop pioneer. Please enjoy the episode with my good friend, Serge. Hello, everybody, and welcome to
Garbage Day!
Yes. Today I have a great guest. His name is Power Serge. He is from the Beats and Pieces crew. How are you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great.
So you were out here doing like a workshop this morning, right? I mean, all day, really.
Yeah. There was a conference over at USC hosted by Tiffany Bong, and there's been like several iterations of it, and I've missed all of them. And so I was like, no, this year I want to go check it out. So yeah, that's the reason I'm out here.
And basically the goal was to like share different ideas between dance instructors, dance professors, people in the hip hop community.
Exactly. In this specific conference, it dealt more with like health and wellness. And so it was super cool to, refresh and pick up some new tools of the trade. Just went as an educator. So it was great. Yeah, I loved it. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. And so you've been what I would say, hip hop dance professor for a long time now. You work at Ohlone College. Do you work anywhere else doing that?
No.
Okay.
I'm strictly there. Yeah.
Okay. But you've been there teaching kind of like, I don't know, the basics, the fundamentals of hip hop and like introducing it to people who maybe otherwise wouldn't know anything about hip hop. And so how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I was a student there, and I was very much involved. And the former hip hop teacher, Denise Lusto, she was a great mentor, And what I really loved about her, I guess her teaching style, it was a little bit unorthodox, but like it just resonated with me in the sense that like that structure, and a lot of times in our street dances or how we picked it up, there was no structure. We created our own structure. And so that's kind of what I enjoyed about her teaching. And, at some point there was a transition. And so a teaching opportunity came up. And because I was so like involved at the time with battles and I was traveling a lot, the director was basically like, hey, would you be interested? And for me, so it was like, it was an opportunity, and that's one thing I will give it up to, the directors at Ohlone who just saw in me something, and so that was the foot in the door. And in a lot of ways, it was a game changer.
And so I guess before you started doing that, were they kind of doing the same thing you were doing now? Or like, did you really revamp like their whole program?
Yeah. I mean, it was your street jazz is how the class is on paper titled, and that's kind of the case across the board too.
Yeah.
And so, but you're right. I kind of not necessarily reworded it. I just more so like took it over, and I was like, no, I have a responsibility to this community to make sure that I'm teaching it holistically and how I learned it, you know, and so and it's morphed over the years, you know. So
okay, so then before you got into that, you obviously were a b-boy. I guess, when did you start breaking?
Yeah, good point. So I started in like 94, 93, 94.
94, damn.
Yeah, 94. I know. It's been a minute. But when I first started, I started popping, you know? So that was how I just, it's in terms of just like accessibility and what I saw, that's just immediately what I saw first.
Yeah.
There was always like the Breakin movies, you know, like Breakin, Breakin 2, B Street. That was always kind of around. But popping was the one that like I gravitated towards. And then eventually, just because of the nature of the dances and how closely they're related in terms of like when you go to events, they're just hand in hand, or at least they were back then. And so, you know, I just transitioned, and something about breaking, it felt right. It marinated with me. It, in a lot of ways, I'm now kind of fine, because I sometimes like I've been on this like this journey the past several years now about understanding why that was so impactful, you know? And so, but at the moment it just clicked.
Yeah. A lot of people have told me that, you know, they started breaking like at a certain point in their life, but it always felt like something they were like almost destined to do. Like they were almost a b-boy before they even knew what breaking was.
That's a good point. Yeah. In terms of energy, you know, because I think that most of these social dances, there's just different energies behind it. And so actually, so I'm in a doctoral program, but right now, and one of my professors, he broke it down really good. And what he said was, basically was like, you know what, growing up where I did, and he was like, he grew up in East Oakland.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I grew up in South Hayward, you know, it's different, but you know, and there's still a lot of similarities in terms of just the struggles and, you know, similar scenarios in the pressures. And what I mean by pressures was being like Latino in the hood. It was like, you know, I had to be on one, you know, as soon as I stepped outside, it's like, okay, why are you looking at me? You know, like why, you know, like I had to kind of play the card. Otherwise I'd get either punked or bullied, you know, like it was.
Yeah.
And so it was like, and so the way my professor put it was that he wasn't at 0. He had to be like, he was always on 90, you know, like people don't go 0 to 100. He was like, I'd go 90 to 100. Right. Cause almost anything would set you off. And I was like, yo, yes, that was me walking around. So it was like a pent up energy. And so it being introduced to breaking, you know, was just, it was that. Yeah. It was just like, I needed that energy that today. Well, then I didn't know, but today, and you know, when I look back, I'm like, yeah, that was such a healer for me. That's how I dealt with my traumas. And, you know, and in a lot of ways, I didn't have to be, I mean, in a lot of ways, like I was always at 90, and then through breaking, it was like 80, 70, you know, because it, in a lot of ways, it saved me from
going down the
those
path.
Vices. Exactly.
Yeah. The darkness. Yeah, no, I always felt like once I found breaking, it was like I felt like I was destined to do that, because I was always just, you know, I mean, I've been into like art my whole life. My mom is an artist. You know, my dad is somewhat of an artist as well. My grandpa, in their own way. I mean, this table was made by my dad, so he's like a furniture maker and a contractor. So I've been kind of around like the creative mind mentality my whole life. And, you know, so I was always doing different things. I did a lot of martial arts and stuff. And I don't know. I always was looking for something that where like it was mine. It was something that I make, and I could just say, this is mine.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I did martial arts for a long time, and it was always like, oh, you got to kick this way. You got to do this. And then I was like, okay, I'm sick of this shit. And then when I found breaking, I don't know. It was kind of like, I did something a certain way and people were like, oh, that's cool that you figured out your own way to do that. And I was like, oh, that's tight. It's like encouraged to do this. And so that's when it really like hit me that this is what I really should be doing.
Yeah.
And I've always been really into music too. So once I found it, and it's always like high energy, drum beat patterns and stuff. And so I was always into that type of music. So then I was like, oh, that's what these guys dance to all the time. I'm like, dude, this is for me. And so it really felt like, I was destined to do it, I guess. So I was a b-boy before I even knew what breaking was.
Yeah. And I think you touch on, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said there. Because I've equally been thinking about that too. People get into hip hop for various reasons.
Yeah.
The attraction is there's a lot of social capital, and just like you build credit, like you build, and so for me it was like more so of a coat of armor, like it kind of protected me. Because I became the breaker. Certain people weren't necessarily headhunting for me. It was like, so it saved me in that sense.
Yeah.
But
it was a hood pass.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
It kind of was.
Like all the gangsters were like, all right, we're
not
not
just gonna roll around on the ground. All right, he's not trying to gangbang.
Yeah. And then there's the other aspect that like you touched on that I've equally have been kind of like trying to understand. Like, well, why is that? Why do we get a pass? And so I've been reading up on something called like male hegemony, which is like hegemony is basically like a grid, right? Like what we view as in this specific scenario, male masculinity. Like where do we stand in this scale, right?
Yeah.
And so if I were to say like, well, what's our view on a successful American male? A lot of people are like, well, maybe a white guy, well, that's who I view as successful, well, then where do we see a successful Latino, right? And then probably be like a little bit lower in the scale, right? And then like, well, where do you put a successful Latino b-boy? Then it's like, I get a little bit more, right? And then what if we were like, well, where do we put, a white dancer? Like his cred kind of drops. But where do we put a white guy that break dances? It's like, and so then I've been looking like, okay, these are some of the frameworks that society imposes on us that we don't necessarily begin to, if we don't have the tools or the hindsight to even fathom that, it's like, how would we even? But those are the stuff that I'm like, okay, hip hop breaking affects so many different people in different ways. What worked for me is not going to necessarily, the reason I got into it's not necessarily the same way because people have different answers.
Yeah, for sure.
It's cliche. People are like, save my life. Some people be like, the girls, the attention, but those are way different reasons to dance.
Yeah. On this podcast, I usually ask this question and I've gotten so many answers to this. Like a lot of it, girls or it saved my life or whatever, So,
yeah. And so then we know that breaking and hip hop touches on different wavelengths.
Yeah.
And understanding that, like what and at the end of the day, I guess what I'm getting at is that once we start understanding all these different reasons why, we ultimately start understanding that like, whoa, it's still on some oppressive structures,
Yeah.
like,
I don't know the oppression, I guess. I don't fully understand all that because, I don't know. I guess when I look at the oppression, it's like, I don't feel like we're super oppressed in a way where, we can't do it, but I think there is a social weirdness to what we do that is maybe still around. And maybe that is the oppression. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I don't have people coming up to me going like, little break dancers and you get in the back of the bus. Like that doesn't happen, but I don't know. I do think hip hop does kind of get a bad name for some reason or another.
Right. And so even that, like, I've been trying to understand too, because like growing up, it was like, telling, my parents like, I'm doing this art form, it'd be like, what, they just didn't understand.
Yeah.
And what they don't, what they viewed it as is like, oh, you're doing this art form that was birthed in the African American diaspora. So automatically it's of lesser value. Right.
Oh,
it's like,
I see.
I don't, you need to stop doing that because it's portrayed as such in media.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it was like, you need to stop doing that. But yet understanding that like, no, but this is giving me a voice. This is, for some reason, I feel like liberated. I feel like I can become not just Sergio. I'm like Power Surge now. Like I'm creating
You're
something.
Superhero.
Yeah. It gave us a pass, and so that's kind of what I'm referring to in the sense that like, it did a lot for us, in a lot of different lights, but recognizing where it's theoretically, where it's birthed, and understanding that like, okay, why is this art form viewed as lower class, and then other things I've been studying is being in education is that like, well, we hold art, Eurocentric middle class, we hold that type of art to a higher standard. That's why it's taught in education, so as we go through the system, we're just taught that that's higher art. And because hip hop is, in many ways birthed in the African American community, it's like automatic, it's lower value because it's from these communities that were redline, but they're just of not lower status, but in the eyes of just society.
I wonder if it's because like you say higher art as in like, let's say Roman architecture, Roman art, that stuff. We look at that as some intellectual activity to study that, but then hip hop, maybe not. I wonder if it's mainly because hip hop really hasn't paid its dues in the history of, our species really, like, cause it's only been around 50 years or so, 60 years. Whereas, obviously Roman art has been around since freaking, I don't know, 1000 BC or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. So I wonder if it's maybe that too.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
That's a good point. And to that, I for those of us that are in education pushing hip hop, I advise us to tread very carefully, because when we look at and we start seeing the commodification of hip hop now, right? Like Breakin, it's already being commodified, like, and why is that? Like, why is it that like, when I got hip hop, it was through like clips of a music video. There was like a couple kids on literally on cardboard at my elementary school doing, it was like super rooted in the community, and now when I receive hip hop, it's like, these magical short clips of people flying, which is it's just being commodified, right? Like, and not enough, I guess, not enough community, right? So my perception as a new kid is like, oh, cool, that's Breaking, people flying and doing these amazing moves and O's, and what gets left out is that initial piece of community, and so as an educator, I advise us to tread very carefully, mainly because we have seen other art forms get commodified, like rock and roll. Yeah. Like tap, like jazz, like these were art forms birthed in the African American diaspora, yet somehow they've lost their voice. They got commodified. They're like, when you think of rock and roll, people think of Elvis. And I'm like, no, that's not, like, well, why can't there be, there's a rock and roll Hall of Fame. We as Americans, we know who the great rock and roll artists are, but can we say that for hip hop? Kids should know who the top 5, but yeah. And so, it's like, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like, at what point are we at the verge of losing it? And if we continue down that path, my fear is that it will be.
That it would become more of like mainstream, I guess, is where you're trying to go for.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be high art. When we see that, you know, its social capital in society is immense. You know, we do know that white America is the biggest consumer of it. You know, we know that, and it's kids all over this country consume it daily. You know, top 5 Billboard albums are hip hop songs. You know, so it's in a lot of ways already there. But when it comes to the arts, there's still that like off balance. You know, so we know that the entertainment business is like the last, you know, white supremacist, racist, you know, industry left. You know, there's typecasting. Unfortunately, you know, a Latino or a black and brown person probably isn't going to play Cinderella. You know, like you start seeing that.
I could be a ninja, maybe.
Right. Well, yeah, you're going to play the typecast. You're going to play.
You could be a cholo.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, and so we know that. And,
I see what you're saying.
And so like, because I kind of see, you know, when I think of hip hop, I also think of hip hop arts. You know, like this is dance, music. It's and so it's just a, you know, we're playing into this structure that has yet to fully embrace an art form that is going to rebel against it. So in a lot of ways,
I see.
You know, so in a lot of ways, it likes it. You know, it loves hip hop. It's you know, its kids consume it. And so how do we change the lens on it?
Yeah, the way, I mean, I'm glad you bring this up, because this is exactly why I started the podcast, because I was always seeing like some bullshit in Hollywood, like portraying hip hop as, you know, hip hop. Yeah. And I'm like, that ain't hip hop. That's some whack fucking shit. Yeah. And so I wanted to do this podcast to talk to real hip hoppers, to show what it's all about. You know, obviously I've been bringing on mostly B-boys, dancers and stuff, because I think it's that side of hip hop doesn't really get much shine. It's always like, oh yeah, it's that dude that did a flip in the background of, you know, freaking Beyonce's music video or whatever. And that's, most people don't even know that is hip hop. But, you know, I think a lot of people would be shocked to know that hip hop music probably wouldn't even exist if a B-boy wasn't ever at that, you know, party with, you know, Cool Herc out there going, oh, I want to see that dance move again. Let me play this break again. Right, boom, boom, boom. Oh, now the break is invented. Let's start rapping over it. You know what I mean? That wouldn't have happened if there wasn't a B-boy there, right? So I don't think most people know that. And so I see Hollywood really dictating what hip hop is, and it annoyed me a lot, and that's why I wanted to start a podcast to shine more of a light on like what the hip hop that I know, and hopefully other people will see that and go, okay, there's more to the story than what I see on TV.
Right. And we need to advocate. You know, we need to. So you know, there's this push on, you know, the Olympics.
Oh yeah,
and I see, you know, various you know, discussions, and I've been on a panel too about it, and you know, and it's great. I'm 100% for it, just because of the opportunities that'll arise. Okay. Yeah. My only, you know, concern is you know, if it goes down that route, will it become more for the kids that have rather than the kids that don't have? You know, because
I see,
because of its popularity. Trust me that more studios are going to want to get involved, you know, like, and so it's, to me, it's still part of that. You know, we love hip hop, but like, we don't want it for all its baggage. You know, we don't want it for all of its, we want it because it's just, it gets views. It's impressive, but I don't need to hear all the other stuff, you know? So it's, in some ways it's cutting its strings, you know? And so that's it.
I think that's a good argument for maybe against Olympics, but it's, I think there's an argument to be made that breaking really should be going in that path, but the community should have the whole, you know, we should have the hold on it, you know, where we can say what we're doing with it and how it's going to be portrayed, because that's the one thing I'm really weary about with Olympics, is that if you're going to get a whole bunch of new people incoming, I think that's great, but also if they're seeing, you know, hip hop, and then they come in and they see freaking, you know, grimy ass hip hop, and they're going to be like, oh wait, this isn't what I was expecting, but it's like, that is what you should have been expecting, and unfortunately it wasn't portrayed that way.
Absolutely. And I think you nailed it in the point, like, you know, who's got a hold of it, you know, and do we have a hold of it, you know? And so it's there's a lot of layers to this, and, you know, as a community, we really have to put emotions aside, you know, and understand. And, you know, I spoke to Ken Swift. He was on this panel with me, and he kind of said it the best. He was like, well, who needs who? We already have championships. You know? You know, and I was like, yeah, we do. You know, so in theory, who needs who? You know, like, why?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
exactly. Kind of, I was like, yeah, that's right. We already have championships. Why do we need this extra medal?
I guess the benefit really is to just expand it, but we have championships. We have a big community, a big rich community, you know, of, you know, rich in terms of like culture. And so really the only benefit really is to just kind of expand that to places where it might not have reached yet. And so, which I think is important to do, but we also got to do that.
Yeah. And I get it, you know, because at the root of it, I think it comes to again, opportunity, which translates into financials, you know, like, and, you know, being that we are in a capitalist society where cash rules everything around me, then of course it makes sense, you know, like, and, you know, for a lot of us, we do struggle, unfortunately. Like, it's the payoff aren't necessarily, we get paid off in, you know, we get celebrated, we get, but, you know, for a lot of us are like, well, we're getting to the point where, like, we really need to see some financials, like, stability here. And so I understand that push, but let's, you know, we've got to be very careful.
No, I do think that it would be amazing to see, you know, some world champion B-boys that are like, you know, legit stars, you know, with, you know, making their fortune from just doing this. But I also don't want to see, you know, the culture take a hit. Where if you want that to happen, you gotta be like a sellout a little bit. Right. Which I would think is very unfortunate. And I think that's how most people in the community probably feel. And so I think we're in good hands in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I guess just being, you know, aware of where this possibly could go, and just, you know, not being closed-minded to it, but being smart about it. And you know what? I believe that there's plenty of folks doing the other side of the work, you know, which is that community aspect. And there's a lot of people who just don't get their shine, you know, just because, like, they're not winning, or they're not, you know, trying, or, you know, social media, you know, followers or whatever. I don't, what's the word? Influencer.
But influencers, you know, like, that they don't, you know, and so we need to fix that narrative as well. You know, that, like, hey, just because he's not an influencer, or just because, like, he's not winning, that doesn't mean he's not qualified to judge or to speak on it, or to, you know, and there's a vast community, you know, like, there's a lot of us, and that's the work. That's how it's going to balance out. Otherwise,
I think with that, a lot of people don't understand some people's perspective, because, like, that person who, like, maybe doesn't have an Instagram following or whatever, social media presence, doesn't go out winning all these huge competitions, and they go, oh, he's just not successful. But it's like, it might not be that. It might be that this guy, you know, is a very good dancer, or, you know, member of the community. He just doesn't want to do that. He or she doesn't really want to do that. Maybe that's just not part of what they're doing, but it doesn't mean that they're not qualified to do it. I mean, I would say if if you've been in this scene for, as long as some of these people that I know that have, basically zero social status, I guess, within the community, I would trust their opinion over a lot of other people that do have that social status for sure. So just because I know what they are capable of and what I've learned from a lot of them, and I wouldn't be what I am now as a dancer if I hadn't encountered them. So I imagine so many people have encountered people like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100% for sure.
I mean, I would say the community is built on people like that, really. And so I don't know.
Yeah. And you're right. There's a lot of folks that just don't get that shine, and celebrating them and recognizing them for the work that they do, because it's not, there's like no props. There's no, it's a lonely path. It's difficult. It's the rewards aren't necessarily seen a lot of times, like immediately. And so, and we have to kind of understand where and why that is. And again, it's like there's a push and I understand that at the essence, it was about making a name for yourself, and we just strapped a rocket on that concept, and now it's like that's geared.
What it's all about. But
and in a lot of ways, it's that was specific to a community, but like what the essence is really it's really bringing people together, those jams, like, and vibing out to music and kind of, rebelling towards a system, and so it's like those contests weren't around in the 70s. That's like an idea concept that came in later.
Yeah.
And so like, you mean to tell me that everything's now about the contest? Like people don't even stick around when they lose now. Like they'll lose in prelims, don't make top 32 and they're out. Yeah. And they're not even there for quote unquote community. They're literally there for the contest. Yeah. And so, and I can naively assume that this happens fairly like often. Yeah. And so where if that's the path that we're headed and we're going to go Olympics and we're, like it's okay. There needs to be more of an emphasis on, this community type of work. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a huge shift in like the way events take place, because it's all competition based, where when I first started, it wasn't necessarily that. It was kind of like show up to this thing, there's music, and then you'll be battling people. There might not even be like a competition, it's just battling, just battle, like they're just playing. It's a DJ, it's not even a breaking event, it's like just music. And like there's this roller skating rink in Sac that they used to do this, and it was just like dancing. Right. You just go there in high school or whatever, and then you just be dancing. But then it'd be a freaking jam though, because it'd be crews all over the place, and you're just battling and stuff. And so, but then obviously there's a little bit of money that started getting involved with all these competitions. Let's do, let's set up like some rules and say, okay, 3 person per crew or whatever going at it. We're going to do a tournament style, and then the winner gets this pot of money or whatever. Right. Then, I mean, that the small lucrativeness of it, I think, just kept growing, and that's what drove it. So then that became in the forefront of the event, and I think the essence of it, which is just the dancing, right? And having a good time, showing what you're all about, is maybe in the back burner a little bit now. Yeah.
And to be perfectly clear, like I am not against that.
Yeah, I'm not against it either.
I love me a good jam. Like
I like some dope raw battles. Yeah. But I think we don't want to lose that other part of it too. And it
or at the very least, I would say, hey, if you're teaching these art forms, maybe hold off. Here's the thing. Here's the deal. Like, I understand the impact on bringing students to these events because it's like they get it. It's like you're teaching them a language that like, it's like what's a CC? What's footwork? What's it's like until they see it, until they see the language being spoken and converse, then they get it. You're like, oh, okay, now I understand. And unfortunately, there's just not many events that focus on the actual jam, right? It's very contest, like sign up, wristband, sign up here if you're entering, bracket. Like it's very, and it's a lot. These jams are like, sometimes when they start top 16, you're just like, okay, geez, I'm gonna be here for a while. And then like they take a 30-minute break and then a top 8 and then and it's just like that's a lot. It's a lot to kind of take in. Whereas if it was, and the essence of a jam is a party, right? So I understand it's but what I would argue is like maybe not that put off taking your students to these events, but more so let's change the narrative a little bit. Let's take it back to skating rink. Hey, yo, there's so and so. Let me test myself. Let me let them
fall in love with the real hip hop and then introduce them to just competitions and be like, okay, this is something you can also do.
Right, exactly. Rather than already kind of putting them on a contest track. Because then you're not,
because then you just have contest b-boys and
that's it.
That's cool and all, but I don't know. I feel like there's a chapter in the book that's missing.
Good point. Yeah.
So okay, so yes, so Olympics wise, so you're on board with that. I'm on board with it as well. And in terms of like mainstream hip hop, because obviously I think on the track we're going, hip hop is going to become more and more mainstream. Where do you see hip hop not necessarily breaking like music? Where do you see that going? And what is your view on like music today?
Yeah. The fact that, I love music. I love anything that is passionately made. I can't necessarily knock any form of music style. I'll dig anything that is just, like I said, as long as it's passionately made, there's some genuine talent behind it, then I'm with it. I'm like, yo, this is singing to me, So I love music. In terms of hip hop, I grew up in a time where the music was a little bit more conscious, like it was just more conscious based, and so it's I miss that, I'll be quite frank that like a lot of times like, man, the good old days, like I'll throw that card around, and and I also recognize that like that silencing, how is it that there's like a couple white guys that own all of the hip hop album, like record companies? How is that even a thing? How is that seriously? And so I don't think that much will change. I think that as some of us start jumping into education and, which we equally need to be careful. But as long as we continue advocating for it, no. Hip hop was a means to fight white supremacy in a lot of ways. It was like, and as long as we can continue pushing those narratives in education, I think you will start seeing that shift. But it's a group effort, at every single aspect, like from the education, from the contestants, from the folks that are filming this stuff, from these podcasts, from like it's gonna be it's got to be a communal shift in order to start seeing that hip hop that we want to see. And it's just not even just the beat. It's like in graffiti and DJing and MCing. It's just got to be a communal shift to be like, wait, hold up. To your point earlier, like let's grab a hold of it first, and like let's push it in the way or in the means that we want to see it. Because right now there's a lot of aspects of it that we don't control.
Yeah. And so you think that white supremacy has something to do with that?
Yeah, and again, when I think of the experience of African Americans, like, okay, well, there was like a business model to bring Africans to America, and it was like the transatlantic trade slave or slave trade, and like that was a business model. I was like, how can I get these people to come here to work this land to kind of bolster us, like to kind of boost our economy. And so, slavery for 400 years, and then you have Jim Crow for another 100, and then you tell folks like, then you redline them like, nah, you can't move to the suburbs. You're staying right here in these quote unquote ghettos, And so, African Americans had to be resourceful. Like, there's no counselors or anything. Like, what do? They start, playing instruments. They start singing. They, so there's like, I attribute a lot of it. A lot of it goes back to that just pain and suffering that they were going through.
I guess it was born out of some sort of oppression a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at during the slave era, we know that African Americans could not get educated. If they knew you were trying to learn how to read or write, you'd be killed on the spot. Like, it'd be, if you were a slave master trying to teach, you equally would be hungry. So it was like, that's where each one teach one comes from, because they had to secretly teach each other.
Yeah, okay.
So like, and that's something we toss around like nothing, like each one teach one, knowing that it's deep roots, We also know that during this era that, languages were stripped, like you couldn't just say like, hey, guess what? I'm going up to the north. You had to flip words. So rapping was invented, like they flipped things, and so language in terms of rapping and how we flip things, the idea of flipping something, like Grandmaster Cat said something to me that was pretty profound bunch of years ago. He said, hip hop didn't invent anything. It reinvented everything. And it kind of needed to, because of the structures that were in place. Right. And so when I say hip hop was meant to fight white supremacy, it 100% was in those regards, and so, so it's like, how do we continue honoring that? How do we continue knowing that this was a tool for this group, and I've used it to find my own voice. I just know that I have to pay respect to it. I stand here in solidarity to it. And what can I do? And this is my way of making sure that I don't necessarily take the good, because there's a saying like, oh, they'll take our rhythm, but not our blues, and so I don't want to be that guy that just takes the rhythm. Like, I'm going to stand and fight with you.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it was like born out of or reborn out of the same oppression, and then I guess used against it in a cultural way. And now that you're seeing it, more and more ethnicities being involved with it, we're just seeing the fun part of it, right. But we're not seeing the struggles that it was born of. And I think, I agree with that we need to respect the way that it was invented, I guess.
Yeah. And it's not even just breaking in hip hop. It was like, there was a couple policies that went in place in the 60s, with President Lyndon B. Johnson, whether it was the Civil Rights Movement, there was like the Secondary Education Act, where more funding, schools got desegregated. And so this law was passed where like, let's send more money to these communities of color, and most of the time the folks at the school systems that would receive it would be like, nah, this money's going to go for us, and African Americans were bused to white communities, but white communities weren't bused to African American communities. Yeah. It didn't go both ways. And so, I see. So a lot was happening. Music played a huge role. When we think of like James Brown, like, get involved, get into it, like that's super powerful. Like he's literally telling people like,
Get your shit together.
Yeah, get up. Let's get involved. Get into it. Everybody over here, get involved. Everybody over there, get into it. Like that's powerful. And so he wasn't just speaking to kids in the Bronx.
Yeah.
He was speaking to kids everywhere. And so it's no surprise to me that you have Oakland Boogaloo pop up in this late 60s, 70s, locking here in LA. There's all these social movements started to sprout literally in the span of a decade. Like, why is that? And like recognizing that as well. I don't think that it's a whole hip hop thing. I think it's just like all these social movements are connected.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
No, I agree with that. I guess when I hear, I guess the term racism and stuff kind of thrown around, it always like bothers me because I'm like, I feel like we all just need to get over that because, I just hate that, we're sitting in a community of hip hop where there's like so many races now that are like enjoying it and having fun and stuff and experiencing it. And then we're still going like, oh, racism, this, racism, that. And that bothers me because I think it feeds it a little bit. I mean, but I do agree with you that we need to respect where it came from. And
right.
So in a way, it's like respecting your ancestors. I think that I can get on board with that, but I also think it's like, let's also go, okay, this is a chapter in history. Let's read the chapter, but also go, okay, we're now in this community together and we're going to make it a good community, whatever race you are. That's what I feel about it.
Yeah. And so I would, if I'll push back a little bit and I'll say that, there's still a lot of injustices currently happening in communities of color. Like that is, we can't negate that.
Yeah.
There was, when hip hop, when it was introduced or when it was like, when it was, first highlighted, it was on the jam vibe, hip hop parade, not even that's like 90s, but like, it was very more like an MC was just there to, pump up the crowd. Like, as it became more mainstream, through the 80s, you start hearing some things, but late 80s, early 90s, that's when you start really hearing some conscious stuff. There's a reason why NWA, came out with that album or that song, F the Police. Like that is really powerful. And why would these 6, 7, 8 young black men be screaming about that? Why would they? So we can't deny that there's injustices in these communities that still currently happen today. And so that voice, I feel we're kind of losing it. And so when I see other b-boys or community people like be practicing this and then not be for Black Lives Matter, I'm like, do you see the irony in this?
Yeah.
Well,
I guess when I see that, I hate putting a race to it because it's like, you go F the police. I feel like it's more you're saying F the man, F the system, F the things that are oppressing me.
Right.
It might be that there's a certain group of white individuals that are maybe doing that, but I hate to point the finger just at white. That's
sure.
where I go because
sure. I think in that sense what we're speaking on now is classism.
Classism, yeah, I can get behind that.
And classism has no color lines.
Yeah.
Shoot, if you don't make, I mean, in terms of classism, I mean, you could be white, and if you're not making that marker, you're straight trash. You're straight white trash. Seriously, and so like, there's classism, but we also can't necessarily like deny that there is just systemic racism, and I get it. A lot of times we're just not gamed up on this vocabulary, this understanding, but classism is equally real, and so, and you're right. Like, it's tough for me sometimes, the word race, and I know it's a tough subject, but like, you know, hip hop had, you know, was birthed off of those discussions, and it needs to continue those discussions. And I think that's one of the reasons of the fear and institution and like, well, I don't know like if I want that entire baggage, you know, kind of to what we were talking about earlier. And so, you know, we just, for those that like feel, you know, ultimately I would argue everyone needs to be pushing this, you know, like it's the only way we're going to stop seeing police officers shooting our black brothers and sisters. You know, this is what, you know, and so, but again, you know, it's we do need to have those conversations. Yeah. Does it have to happen every moment? No.
Yeah.
We can literally continue the peace, love, unity, and having fun. Yeah. You know, but recognizing that peace, love, unity, and having fun was specific to a community who were murdering each other, you know, but I think a lot of time it gets kind of taken out of context. Well, no. Let me take that back. It's exactly what that is. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. Yeah. You know, but at its core, it was meant for this specific community to be like, yo, idiots, you're killing each other. That's what the man wants. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. What bothers me is when we put a color to it and go, you know, black this, white this. It's more like idiot this, you know, good person this. I think that's I'd just rather get behind that, you know, whereas like, because like I think whether you're whatever race, you can see injustice, at least if you open your eyes to it. And that's what we need to focus on it. But then when we're going like, oh, it was caused by white this, white that. I mean, yeah, in a way, yeah, from history, a lot of it probably stems from somewhere in slavery times or whatever. But I look at it like we're at this point where, you know, we're all here, and I don't know. I mean, nobody alive probably has ever owned a slave. And so I feel like we can't do anything about our history, but we can do something about what's going on right now. And that is like injustices that maybe still exist because of it and maybe have evolved to something else. Let's fight that. And it just always bothers me when we go like, let's point the finger at a certain color, because I think that generalization doesn't exist anymore, to me, at least, you know, because again, like I've seen, you know, white people in the same situations as black people. Maybe it's not as many because, you know, because of historical reasons, but I don't want to discount that it's still there. You know, same thing, Asian communities, Latino communities. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just hate sure. when we jump into the race.
Right. Yeah. And then I'll just, to cap it, like, this is just one where we'll agree to disagree, you know, I'll definitely will continue fighting for like, yeah, but you know, they're still super relevant. I've experienced it. And there's just, you know, this is, you know, this country is based on like colonialism, you know, like when we go to school, I was an ESL student. And so I was put in a portable with kids with disabilities because I didn't speak the language of power. You know, I didn't speak it well enough, you know, and then I started speaking the vernacular of those in my community. And then it was just like, oh, he's low class, because I speak like this, you know what I'm saying? Like, and in other words, just because like, I know what that means, you know, there's color attached to that, you know? And so, now that like I'm gamed up with degrees and I have, you know, these extra letters next to my name, you know, it's like, okay, now you'll respect me, you know, because I'm playing your game, you know? And so, and that's why education is important to me, because like, yeah, I can bark all day, but I need some teeth to bite, you know? And in this, you know, this society that we're in, unfortunately, education is attached to that power. You know, there is a culture of power, and education's tied to that. And a lot of times it's not accessible to everyone. It's not, you know, we are, there's a reason why dropout rates are so high in Black and brown communities, we just know, and that's just not. There's a reason why, and again, like I'm gonna argue with it's racial, unfortunately, because there's the way this whole society was just birthed is on, like I said, colonialism. Like when people say like we speak English in this country, I'm like, where is that written in the in the Constitution? Show me where it's written, and it's not. We've just accepted this Eurocentric ideology that this is how it's got to be. And why is that? Like,
I think it's probably just because a lot of people speak it. That's probably it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the culture, it's the language of power.
Yeah, I see.
Like it 100% is like, why can't I speak my Spanish? And this is native land. We're in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Like, you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, how is that even?
Yeah.
And people say like, well, hey man, like we ain't crossing no borders. That border crossed us. And so
yeah, that's true.
And so again, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's what it comes down to is like kind of like the Matrix. You can either take the red pill and see how deep the rabbit hole goes, or you take the blue pill. No, guess what? You're still strapped into the Matrix, and so be it. And so not everyone's introduced to this. What we're talking about. I know that potentially one of the things that I'm saying are a little bit more in depth, but I do feel people want to hear it. I do feel that people like, not that they want to hear, I think people also need to hear it, Now, whether people relate to it or marinate on it, that's up to debate, for sure. If it ain't marinate with you, then whatever, you can, but it's deep. I get that.
Yeah. I mean, I can agree that there's like maybe some kind of racist historically baked into it somewhere, and we have grown into where we are now. But it's hard for me to get behind the idea that there's some like evil freaking mastermind going like, haha, I hate this race.
Right.
I think it's more of like we all grew up in, society has grown the way it is. And so I guess I look at it more as like, this is where we're at right now. So let's fix this and stop. Yeah. Just stop fighting each other racially. That's what I hate.
Sure.
about it.
Sure.
And like, what really bothers me is when I see like someone who's trying to do good by pointing at something, some injustice, and then also pulling in race to the argument, because I feel like it just serves to divide people in a way. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's like saying sports teams and stuff, I don't know. You get what I'm saying?
I do. And I get it.
Because like it's like when you go, oh, this group here did this. But it's not like you're pointing the finger at them here. You're pointing at maybe their ancestors or something that helped bake it into the culture that we have now.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
That's why I hate it, because your sports team from hundreds of years ago did something, and bam, you're still a part of that sports team. You know what I mean? And that's what bothers me a lot, because it's just serving to divide me and you now, and other people.
Yeah, I understand. I think that 100 years ago, well, let's just put it like 600 years ago, those forefathers, those European Americans or those settlers, or they came and they constructed something on the backs of people of color. Yeah. And pretty much just like, we're like, cool, it's built.
It's built. Yeah.
And that's it, but people say like the system's broken. It's not broken. It's meant to be this way, I see. And so generations later, compounded, it's why a lot of us will say like, well, yeah, it's just that's old school.
It's baked in, and we go, oh, this is what we're used to.
So agreeing that
I think that's right.
Yeah, agreeing that it's baked in, and it may not affect others as much as people of color. Like it just, but it's like, well, why, if it's equal, then why are African Americans, jailed the most? When, how's that?
I don't agree that it's equally, everything is equally treated right now. I think that there is a lot of injustices going in terms of that, and and there's something that we need to do about it.
Right.
But
and
I hate
so,
using language that still divides us in that same way. You know what I mean?
No, like I said, I get it. I understand it. Like, these are conversations that I have with my peers, like, on the daily. Like, it is like, how do we change that narrative? How do we, it's difficult. And like I said, these are just difficult conversations, and I'm super glad we're having this. And I hope the folks that like are listening are like, they're hearing two sides in a lot of ways. And this is a super dope debate, and this is what it's about. Like, hey, if we end up here like agreeing to disagree, so be it. Like, that, I
don't think we really disagree. I think,
but that doesn't change our friendship. Like, I'm still gonna text you later and be like, yo, what the F? Well, like, what's going? Like, that
doesn't send a dick pic.
Yeah, and that doesn't change how. But I'm hoping that this just resonates with people, and that, like, it's deep. I get
there's
that.
a lot of nuance in it, I think, for sure. It's a nuance that is hard to really, put on paper, I think.
Yeah. And I want to be empathetic too. Like I said, I understand where you're coming from. I get that. I get that narrative,
The thing I think that drives it home for me is, like, I look at it when someone goes, oh yeah, the whites did this. And then I go, yeah, well, my mom's side is white, but they're actually German immigrants that came like way later. You know what I mean? My grandparents were immigrants, so they had nothing to do with it, but they're still grouped in that category. You get what I'm saying? And so that's when I go, but we're still pointing the finger at them. And then what about me? I'm like, I'm half Japanese, half German. I guess maybe the finger's half pointed at me or something. I don't know.
Sure.
But I'd rather not point the finger. I'd rather just say let's solve the issues, and not let the man keep fucking doing it. You know what I mean?
Right. Because he's doing it to all of us.
Yeah, it's happening to everyone. It's a different percentage for sure for different groups.
Right.
But we're all feeling it in some way.
Yeah. And these conversations do need to happen, especially in hip hop. Like, that was, like I said, birthed out of that exact struggle, and that, like, and so there's, I don't know if there's a lot of education on this. I don't know about accessibility to this information. A lot of times, like I said, it's I'll go online and I'll go on my social media and I'm like, cool, those are amazing moves. Mm-hmm. Those are, and they're just not said, and I'm making it a point to say it. I'm making a point that every opportunity that I get a chance, I'm gonna be like, hey, guess what? Let's really dig. I don't want to scratch the surface. I want to, like, let's really.
It's an important conversation for
sure.
But I think what I notice on social media a lot is that it's a very short conversation. It's like, oh, you don't agree with me, then block or whatever, or like F you, block. And it's like, dude, it's like so deep though. Like, you really got to sit down and really think about it, discuss it, because it's not something that you can say in like a freaking 100 character tweet or whatever,
For sure. And our events need to start creating spaces for this to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know when the last panel was at a jam. I don't know, I couldn't tell you. I just know that the community from, kind of like from folks that I've been speaking, they've been asking for this. There's and so we just have to provide that. It's in a lot of ways, it's to move forward. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's how we move forward. It's like, there's something brewing, not even just I think just the politics and just the climate right now that we're in. It's just kind of like up front and center, but it's been there. It was a little hidden, but now it's like, oh, it's everywhere. You gotta, but in a lot of ways, in order to combat that, these discussions need to be had, more rather than kind of hearing just one side of the story. How about the other? And having empathy, like, I relate to both sides. I understand that classism is real. I know our white brothers equally struggle, well, financially and in a lot of ways. And they're like, what the F? I'm struggling too. Shoot, I don't, but there's just certain frameworks that like, those, you just can't like, you just can't negate the fact that like, that's real. Like that's systemic racism right there. And you can't like, and so I want to help combat that because there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of like, and so when I think of my experiences, with, policing, knowing that like, in the 90s, there was like the 3-strike rule where like, if you're selling weed, now you're doing life, and who were the ones that suffered from that? It was Black and brown community, and then Prop 21, in 98 or 99, whenever that passed, like, okay, well now we're going to try you as an adult. Those were some real like, and it's not like our schools have counselors. Like, we had like SROs, like police officers and like bars on our windows. Like, that high school to jail complexity, like that's super real, and so. I'm just amazed that I walked out of that unscathed. Like, I have no record, and I made it out of that. That's a huge win. But a lot of my brothers and sisters and community members didn't.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, how do I break that cycle? And so, I need to understand the system. Because it is in a lot of ways a system, that like I go to school, but they don't necessarily, I was told like, oh, your work's insufficient. Oh, your English is kind of lacking. You need to study more. In other words, I was already being told I was a minority. Like, and you compound that from kindergarten up to high school. No, there's no reason why, or there's a lot of reasons why kids will be like, why do I got to go to school? Like, why do I got to learn this? And it's like, well, it's tied to power. And if you want to attain that power, you have to learn this, like, so it's a lot.
Yeah. Education is another weird subject for me too. 'Cause like I think, I think everyone should really work on getting a good education, and unfortunately it's not the easiest thing nowadays.
It's expensive.
I mean, for sure. I was gonna say, because in like public schools, school districts are not equal, and so a lot of times you have these affluent neighborhoods that have very good school systems and other ghetto neighborhoods that have terrible ones, and it's like these educations are not equal. And then going up into higher education, into college, now you have a financial issue where a lot of these ghetto or communities can't afford that. And unfortunately it's so expensive, you go into like stupid amounts of debt to do it. And I'm lucky that I got out of that before it really started getting crazy, but I didn't get out unscathed, I guess. Like I still had some student loans and stuff, but nowadays, dude, it's like I feel like if I was in school now, I'd be like, dude, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. It'd be it'd be scary for me. But and so, it's so important to do it. I'd be really at like a crossroads in a way. Like, should I do this? It might financially break me, but if I don't do it, it's gonna like also financially break me in a way. So, you're right. School has been a huge struggle. It is in a lot of ways one of the hardest things I've ever done.
mainly because of, again, just the structures that are in place. And people say like, just pull yourself up from the bootstraps. Like, yo, I don't even got boots. I don't have straps, like I go to a high school that has like one AP class, yet if I'm trying to transfer to UC, you need at the very least, like
multiple ones.
And I'm like, okay, so that's society telling me, F you, your ass is going to go to a JC.
Like you didn't have the opportunity to even like do that.
Right. And then like, I had a teacher stand in front of me and kind of like tell us, but I was never introduced to lecture halls, like that was, that's classism right there. Like how it's like elitist, like, now you're giving me these classrooms and these courses that I'm like,
dude, my first year of college was so freaking wild to me because like when I got there, I was like, what? This is a fucking different world. Like, I'm so underprepared for this. Cause like high school was relatively easy for me. Like I kind of just breezed through it. Like I got good grades just because I did my homework and that it was like, okay, as long as you do your homework, you're good. But I freaking messed around the whole fucking time. And then you get to college and it's like, you can't do that. But that's, I guess what I've been doing the whole time. And so then I see this and it's like, I really needed to have a counselor there to say, hey, you got to do this. You got to do, like, I didn't even know where to go to like sign up for classes and shit. I think I remember it was like one of the first weeks or something. I was like, yo, where the fuck, what do I do? And then like I had a dorm mate who just was like, what the fuck? What are you doing here? And I was like, dude, I don't know. No one told me this. And so, it was a struggle. And so like the whole time I'm just like trying to figure it out. And I mean, eventually I did it took me solid like 3 years to really like figure it all out. But yeah, it was a weird change.
Yeah. And I think you just probably had like support. There was probably like exposure, but for a lot of folks of color, it's like we drop out right after that first semester. We're like, this ish.
Yeah. And you know what it was for me? It was just like, fuck all these people. I'm going to make them pay. I'm going to make them look at me and go like, oh yeah, he's a fucking dumbass, but he fucking figured it out. So there was like a little bit of I don't know what it is, malice a little bit or something. Some kind of like thing inside me that made me want to prove it, prove someone wrong, I guess. And so,
which is super real, like it's probably, it's one of the main drivers of, actually, it's not the main driver. It's one of the drivers of why I'm back in school again, to be like, all right, you know what? I'll be right back.
Let
me go grab something right quick. And when I come back, I'm just going to come back super well equipped, all right, you know what? Listen up.
Yeah.
So education is, I've grown. I love learning. Don't get me wrong. I love learning. I've had some amazing educators. Education is just one of those things where it's like, there's so many different systems from like, enrolling to your FAFSA, to your counselor, to, campus culture, to the teacher, so there's so many different layers. And if one of those, if several of those layers ain't right, well, even if one of those layers ain't right, it's like, it'll push a lot of us away. It'll be like, man, this application is way too long. Or, just the fact that like, I've been hit with like syllabuses and I'm like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
You're like, this is I'm done. Like, where's the, withdraw button at? Like, after the first day. And so all of that, we've got to recognize that it plays a role. So,
yeah. What was I going to say? I was going to say, education also like, I also think that sometimes education is not quite structured, I think, for the regular person either, because a lot of the shit you learn in school, it's tailored for, I guess, certain career paths, and I think maybe that's what turns a lot of people off to it. Because like, I guess one thing to say about it is like, you don't learn how to do your taxes or anything in school, but it's like, literally everybody has to do this.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I feel like at least one semester or something in high school is
Yeah,
probably
like
a
home
good
ec.
thing. Yeah, seriously.
Here's how you do your laundry, fool. Like, yeah, here's how you cook
I mean,
eggs.
yeah, it's like, I don't know. I feel like maybe that
True.
would resonate with people more, and also, you know, there's a lot of like technical skills in terms of like plumbing and
Right.
that kind of thing, and that's something that a lot of people, like I went to school with a lot of people that were going into those fields, like they knew they were going that way. I was almost going to go in the field of becoming a general contractor like my dad, and I felt like high school really didn't tailor to that, and so I see that a lot of people that probably want to go down that path look at it and go like, oh, this is fucking useless to me.
Yeah.
But if, you know, there was a class about like, you know, management or what, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
like a business kind of management kind of class, they would find a lot of use for that in wherever they go, probably, you know, and then definitely like a tax class or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an archaic system.
Yeah,
That
it is. Yeah. And, you know, and another thing is they don't teach creativity in school. That bothers me a lot.
Let's talk about that for sure.
It hurts creativity in a way.
Oh, 100%. I mean, as an educator, I get students all the time that are like, I'm not creative. And so I start thinking about my experiences, like, you know, hey, Sergio, pay attention, you know, when I'd be doodling. But understand that doodling is what kind of keeps me paying attention. You know, it may look like but look, I'm literally paying attention. It's what I need. It's what I need. There's a lot of different layers to me. Like I need extra stimulus, and you just standing there barking or, you know, yelling or talking about things that I need something else to help me understand or just listen, you know? And so the arts has been, you know, one, a lot of art funding's been cut.
It's
you know,
super getting cut.
And so the fact that teachers will be like, "Hey, pay attention," you know, and so by the time we get to college and we're like, knowing that like, hey, the arts is another means to kind of heal us, you know, like we all need it. Like, okay, try driving around with no music on.
Yeah.
You know, try, that would be a sucky drive, you know, especially if you're in traffic. Like, you need that. Our souls need to kind of feel, we need that. And so let's not forget the importance of the arts. And so, in fact, I sit on the Alameda County Arts Commission.
Oh, really?
And I'm both on their executive board. And so I'm very well involved in this art community. And so
that's good.
You know, and yeah, just being advocates for it.
It's something that I feel like you know how like you take English every year in high school or whatever. I feel like there needs to be creativity class every year that you just take. Right. You know, and maybe that's in the form of, okay, we're going to do a painting class now, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do creative writing, we're going to do something. But something that's, you know, dancing or whatever, like something that's engaging your brain in a creative way, I think is so important to learning. And I think I'm just lucky because my mom is an artist. So it was like, I didn't get that at school, but I go home and she's, you know,
it's there.
It'd be like, do this, you know.
Right.
But it's so weird. It's so wild to me when someone says like, I don't know how to be creative. And I just go oh, well, why don't you just like, I don't know, just imagine and then just fucking do it. I don't know. Cause whenever, I mean, I don't know. So it's kind of second nature to me in a way, cause my mom would, you know, she would say, okay, here.
And hip hop too. I mean, the fact that, you know, we break like, you're forced to create, you know, like, Zulu Grims, he, you know, he was like, what's the number one rule in hip hop? You don't bite, you know? So like you're forced to just continuously be creative. You know? And so,
and it's encouraged.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's encouraged to do something different than what everyone else has done.
And so, you know, that like really kicks in. Like sometimes I'll see art and I'll be like, man, that's weak. You know, like it's just because we're so, our taste is so refined because we unpack, we dismantle and then we rebuild. You know, like our own styles and like, and that's it. and that's like literally any artist. You know, you're okay. You're only as good as your last piece. You're only as good as your last round. You know, your last set of windmills. Like and so understanding that like we just need it, and it's unfortunate when I get students like that. Yeah, I mean I feel for them. Like, all right, cool. Let's kickstart that back up.
Yeah, it's because like I almost look at it. Like if you look at a little kid, like a toddler or whatever, I feel like they're the most creative.
Yeah.
Because it's like, they're not thinking about anything and they just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And I'm like, somewhere along that kid's life, something stopped them. Something said, stop doing this shit.
Yeah.
Stop,
right.
using your imagination and like creating out of that imagination.
Yeah.
And do, I don't know, a fucking math problem or something.
Right.
Read freaking Tom Sawyer or whatever. And they go like, all right, I don't know how to be creative anymore. And I don't know. It feels like it should be the easiest thing in the world, but for so many people, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, as an adult, it does become harder, I think. And I don't know why exactly. And it might just be like societal pressures maybe, but it's just, and I think maybe our school system isn't quite set up for that to really, or creativity doesn't really thrive in this public school system in America.
Yeah. In terms of institutions, like there's been a recording of schools having accessible art programs, right? Like that is. And I think there's like a handful of states that have began to record how much art gets exposed to our students. Yeah. And like California was ranked last. Oh shit. And yet like when you think of California, you think of the arts.
Yeah.
Like you think of like Hollywood and it's you think of it as like artistic, right?
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and so
ranked last.
Yeah. And like I said, there's only a handful of states. So in theory, it could be someone, like in the middle. But in terms of like these 15 states that are measuring this, California ranked last as like its education. Like, you kidding me that California is ranked like 48 or something out of, so it's a light bulb, but that is where, we have to advocate. Like I will 100% advocate for my daughter's education. I definitely want, to your point, I don't want a teacher to be here and be like, hey, stop being creative. Yeah. Like that, if anything, that's in terms of like where we are in just humanity, we need to be the most creative right now, for the solutions or for the problems that are like at our doorstep. Yeah. Like
we are on like a I think in these next 10 years is like a very big transition period as technologically. And so, we got to be really creative with how we like approach it. And I think, creativity really is going to be the solution to it.
Everyone should get involved with hip hop. That's
just, hip hop is the savior. Hip hop will save us.
Yeah. It's going to save the planet.
It's going to save us against the robots that are it's going to save us against Skynet.
Yeah. But hey, if you're on the cusp of like, thinking about learning these street dances, and I'm here to be like, no, you should. You want to get more creative in life and just feel more enriched, like you need to start doing these dances. Or not even just the dances or the social movements, whatever it is, get involved. Get your kids in hip hop.
Or even just as a fan, I mean, like, just get involved with, just come to some events and just like put your energy into it.
Yeah,
it's a community, it's a welcoming community that we want to share what we have with everybody. So I don't think we want to deter people, but we also want to be genuine with how we portray it. So
good point. Yeah.
Well. Dude, we are hitting an hour and 23 minutes right now. So I think we should probably close this show out. You got any closing points?
I just want to give a shout out. One, to you. Thank you for creating this space.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Having me. Thank you to like my wife, my daughter, who doesn't even know it, but she's the main driver in a lot of the work that I do. Shout out to the Bay Area, and all the dancers that are kind of putting up the good fight, and know that there's a lot of work to be done, and I appreciate you, all of you, and I recognize y'all, and they inspire me, and I'm very hopeful that we'll start seeing the change that our communities need, and I just know it's going to be with a lot of fight, but it's one that and throughout humanity, we've humanity has prevailed in its darkest times, and I'm hopeful of that. And this is just a little blip in the road, and it's going to come with a lot of fights, but we'll get through it, And so, shout out to everyone who is putting up that good fight. All my different crews, Beats and Pieces, Fresh Dynamics, the folks over at All the Way Live.
We didn't even get to talk about All the Way Live.
That'll be episode 2.
Episode 2.
There's definitely a lot to say there too. But yeah, anyone who want to reach me, hit me up on my social media handles, Instagram at the Power Serge, the Power Serge, Serge. And thank you.
Dope, man. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think this has been a great discussion. So thank you for coming. Thank you guys for listening. My camera just died. Oh well.
Yeah.
We'll survive. All right. I'm out. Sorry, this show sucks.